Now begin the Planning Commission meeting for March the 3rd, 2010. We have quorum. 4 members are present today. Is there anyone who would like to speak at today's meeting? Otherwise, we would not need to administer the oath. First, we have cases. There are no cases on today's agenda unless there's a late ad. We'll move on to communications. Today would be continuing our strategic planning for the year. If anyone would like to begin, please go ahead.
Well, again, I think the conversation we had last time was to continue with the task force, with the recommendations from the task force for the signage. I imagine you could find that in your old packets if you want. If not, we can re-enter it. Let's see. The one I'm looking at in particular, of course, is the rental signs. If we want to discuss that next time, it would be nice. We could get some, probably, as I say, reprint everything and see what we have. In particular, the nameplate signs for rentals, as well as the rental sign, how often they're used and not. Okay. I know the planner was talking about looking at historic districts as well.
Right.
I'll let him make the case for that. So those are 2 things I see on our plate for coming up at us. But other than that, we can fill up the commission as much or as little as we want.
Right. I spoke at length with the planner about the historic districts, trying to get that going for the Court Street area as something that sort of a low-hanging fruit that we could try to achieve early on. So I do sort of stand behind moving that early to the agenda, as well as the signage one, is trying to get that one moved on.
Do we want to, is it all right if I interject?
Please.
The town hall meeting on April 8th, I know part of the discussion at that meeting will be relating to kind of general community initiatives, aesthetics of the neighborhoods, noise, trash, signage, I believe, is also on the agenda for that meeting. So we could, if signage is something that Planning Commission wants to talk about on March 17th, we can. You guys can start it whenever you want, or we can integrate that into the town hall meeting and see if there's any additional information that stems from that for the second meeting in April.
So your idea at this point is that we'd have, if we're looking at historic district, we ought to be looking at signage in historic districts as well. Is that what you're implying or saying?
Well, I was referring back to your comment about real estate signs and things like that. But I believe that's going to be on the agenda at the town hall meeting on April 8th.
Oh, part of the aesthetics, yeah.
Right.
Okay.
As far as historic preservation and creating a historic district, I would love to get working on that with the Planning Commission in early April, or even March 17th if we're going to have a meeting then.
Okay.
If I may add an item, it seems like it would make sense to come up with an agenda, sort of, maybe we don't settle on our agenda for the entire year at this early phase, but we get a sense for the first quarter, so to speak, and then it would be nice to kind of put those items out there for the public to get feedback on before we discuss it as a commission. So I think Paul's idea of bringing these items to the town hall meeting would be sort of good. And maybe one of us could be represented at the town hall meeting just to say, Planning Commission on the upcoming agenda, we're going to be discussing these items. Outside of the sort of typical cases that typically are put in. And that way, I understand, the B2D thing. Sounds like some people would have liked to know that apparently didn't know about it still. So, if we, again, just trying to get the word out as much as possible in such an environment as a town hall meeting might be worthwhile.
Okay, I'm aware the town hall meeting is covering several things, trash, signage, and really it's mostly quality of life issues and aesthetics. Parties. So that's the thrust of it. That was really a response to the January meeting where they ended up having multiple questions about certain things, including actually building codes, I believe, was one of the things that came up too.
Yeah, that's part of the format for April 8th. So
you can see how it does dovetail with what we're doing. In fact, I think the conversation I've been following with the town hall meeting group is that they would like somebody from the Planning Commission to be there, at least to hear or if not respond.
Right.
And I can volunteer to do that, but you can always play chair too.
Yeah, I can be there. That's fine. Yeah, I mean, I think it is sort of good to sort of write on this sort of curtails where that we, it kind of is what is being discussed currently. So it doesn't feel like, that we're working on things that are totally outside what the public discussion is about. And it's not to say we have to set our agenda strictly by what is at the upcoming town hall meetings. I mean, we can maybe, as we keep working toward this and getting an idea of what our strategic planning is, we can start to sort of help set those agendas coming up. But I think it's a good idea to sort of, fit in with what the discussion is taking place so we can get pertinent information as opposed to just being all across the board with constituents. So, again, if we could just, have a few items that we would discuss at the town hall meeting that are appropriate, I think it'd be a good idea to try to get some public opinion.
Okay. More than likely, they would want to see some the town hall meeting had requests in January. The question is do we give them some kind of framework to work with, or in other words, saying, this is what we're looking at, or this is what you should be looking at. In other words, if they come back with the same questions,
right,
or the same concepts, how do we, do we want to give them some information on what we're thinking, or what's at the very basic, what the code is now, I think, is the easiest thing to start talking about. Saying,
right.
If you're talking about signage, this is what we have. You're talking about building codes, this is what we have.
Right.
So they have a working basis to ask the next question, to get a little bit deeper into the issue. And I'm not sure really what we want to, work around that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it sounds like you already have a lot set up for the town hall meeting, so I don't know if it's how in depth we want to get, or if it's more just sort of an advertisement for what we discuss here.
Okay.
Like these are upcoming items. I don't know. I don't know how you would want to.
Okay, I'll have to review. I haven't read anything. I know they're having a meeting tonight for the committee, and I know they're trying to do. Were they talking about trying to do breakout sessions? I forget. Was that what they were?
Correct, right. Breakout sessions focused on a few different topics.
Okay.
What we're talking about right here: noise, signage, neighborhood vitality, those types of issues. The meeting. I'll be attending the meeting this evening about the planning for it, so I'll try to integrate some of this conversation into that to let them be aware of it. But they did want they were going to approach somebody from the Planning Commission to attend the meeting, basically representing the Planning Commission,
Right.
Not necessarily defending what the Planning Commission does or anything like that, but just as being somebody who's dealing with these things on a regular basis and looking into the alternatives. So it would be good, actually, if Nicholas and RJ, both of you, could attend the meeting as Planning Commission members, as representatives.
So there is a format that's gelling out already. That's what I mean. It's just not going to be the last one was just an open mic question and answer, or mostly questions. The next one is going to get a little bit more involved. So, from my point of view, is what, how do we work it, and what do we want to give them as meat to chew on, so to speak.
Right, right.
Okay, and it's not a big deal. We still have another meeting in March, and probably the next one in April will fall in there too.
Yeah, before then.
So, but so what do you think? I've been doing all the talking. You've been doing all the talking. What does anybody else think is a task for the?
Well, along the lines of the signage for rentals and the nameplates for the signage for real estate and the nameplates for rentals, we need to have those people. They need to come and voice their stance on this in terms of, is there not still a board of realtors, Athens County?
Oh, yeah.
And I don't know if there's an organized landlord association.
There is.
It used to be.
They should come to the town hall meeting too. So.
I think one of the things that, and I spoke with someone a few weeks ago, that I would like to see happen is, with the addition of a city planner, with the growing influence of committees that are established here in Athens, I think it would be important for the Planning Commission to, at some point, really try to redefine itself in terms of what it's doing, what its effect is on the community, what its leadership role is on the community. At this point, it seems as though, in many instances, we're reacting to reports that are brought to us, that are studies that are done by other people, recommendations, etc. And I think that in the future, it would be good for the Planning Commission to be able to get out front of issues and provide more guidance to committees rather than vice versa. I think there's a couple of committees that are already established that seem to have probably more influence or more impact on the community at this point than the Planning Commission does. So, I would like to be able to step back and redefine what the Athens City Planning Commission wants to do, what it's trying to achieve in the community, what its impact should be, what its leadership role should be, in balance with the Planning Commission or the Planning Director and some of the various committees that we have established.
Are you referring to the other commissions, like the Tree Commission? And
Tree Commission would be one. We just seem to, when I see reports that come up here for like Title 41, things of that nature, it really seems as though there's more direction given by those committees, and grant, they're probably more frontline than we are, but at the same time, I really feel as though while we take in what the committees want, because they are a representative body of the community, what the city planner wants, again, because he's been hired by the city to create an organized or a cohesive vision, but I think it's still incumbent upon the Planning Commission to ultimately really be able to be in front of some of these situations, some of these events that can give greater direction to the city. I mean, I would just hate for the Planning Commission to just gradually lose impact in the community, because I don't think that was the purpose of the committees. And I don't think that was necessarily the purpose of a new city planner. So again, since we are representatives supposedly of the community as well, I would like to see how we redefine ourselves in tandem with all the other action groups that are out there.
Probably the best thing to do is do a review of Higher Revised Code of the Planning Commission, and as well as the Athens City Code. They pretty much overlap, but then it tells us what our duties and powers are as a basis. I look at something like the Disabilities Commission, the Tree Commission is public review for very specific interests and issues, but really the decision usually comes down to us. I mean, we have the power in that. We're asking expertise, in terms of landscaping, for instance, which is the easy one to look at. In terms of, you say, okay, how do we evaluate? We can look at the tree or shade tree ordinances, and the Tree Commission has power to look at that too, but rather than us delve through it and count the trees, I much prefer, somebody who has an interest to do that. Disabilities, in terms of ADA compliance, we have to do that anyway. We look to them really to give us a little bit of background in terms of where the law stops and actually the functionality of the law starts, so to speak, because I hear from them many times is that a building is ADA compliant but really is not functional for somebody in a wheelchair or somebody with a disability. Other commissions, like the ad hoc ones, like the sign task force and those nature, those will come and go, but we're really asking, I look at it as getting more buy-in from the community, just not us, because otherwise they will say we're operating in a vacuum. And you're right, but we do have the final say when it comes down to Title 41 is of course questionable, because some of the things we can't restrict, because if they comply to all those things, we can't really nix it in that sense. Subdivisions, yes. PUDs, yes. If we find the intent on this, that's the other thing to look at, is in terms of the zoning code, and look at the intent in the start of each chapter for the zoning and for the subdivision, and see if we need to influence ourselves more with the intent and purposes. Because once we come in, are we just looking at our powers, or are we looking at what we're trying to do? And then, of course, you can always go all the way back to the comprehensive plan and look at that and say, okay, or is our task to actually push the comprehensive plan forward? And it's and that's we have a comprehensive review advisory board too, and of course it's only advisory, but the fact is they're going to tell us how we're doing. They're going to give us yardsticks, and we should be listening to them too. So it's not that they're pushing us, but they're giving us feedback on how we're doing. But again, the power, in many cases, for many of the plattings reside with us. So again, the roles are there. The question is how much you want to step into it, as you say.
Right, in bringing this up, it's not, my intent to, shortchange, those processes. Again, as I said earlier, that these people are representative of the community as well, and in many ways, these committees are frontline committees in terms of what we're going to be discussing. Mm-hmm. But, and what I'm suggesting is not really an attempt to is confrontational or anything like that. No. It's just maybe an assessment is necessary at some point to really kind of redefine or just reemphasize who we are within the framework of city functioning and proceed from there.
Mm-hmm.
The irony here is that we're really just a recommending body ourselves.
Sure.
Okay. So we're taking recommendations, and then we ultimately are recommending to council, who would be the final authority. I don't have a problem with adding a review of the Planning Commission to the 2010 strategic planning.
And actually, that will segue into the piece you have. You'll have a copy in your packet for the bylaws, which were adopted a while back. Mostly just have them so we could review and look at them sometime. I realize it's been a while since they've been adopted. Actually, for a long time, they said draft on top because we were walking around with it. Nobody had ever deleted out the draft. Should be a second page in if you got it there. Do we want to change them, amend them, add things? One of the questions, of course, came up, of course, is how we do our, our public hearings. I think we had a request for the B2D to have, and the B3 zoning public hearing. And I'm aware that I had spoken to council at various times in communication to let people know about it, as well as at the press conference. So there was a verbal notification out there. I believe we do post these. Anybody can get on and get the information. Do we want to put that in the bylaws? How much do we want to put in the bylaws in terms of processes? And I just mentioned it to you. Not that we want to act on it, but it's more information's sake. The other one you're going to have is that site plan 41. The only reason I bring this up is there was a conversation with council about amending the section of it. Not really out of jurisdiction so much, but the first page is all I printed out on it. The first bullet down, 4103 in blue, basically the 3-unit residentials that are located in R3 zones and do not abut R1s and R2 residential zones, but do not require variance. That's what's been proposed to put in there. There was some discussion, and I think there will be continued discussion on City Council of taking that exception out. And I just mentioned in passing, it's really not on our plate, but just to get you guys aware of it. Is that pretty much cover what you saw at the?
That's what I saw, yeah.
Okay.
The basic gist of that part of it was, if a project was already in compliance with the zoning regulations, it didn't have any variances, and it was in an R3 and it met all the bulk controls, why does it have to go through Title 41? Mm-hmm. And if it wasn't abutting next to an R1 or R2, that was the main gist that was presented to Paul and I when we were sitting on that Title 41 review committee.
I think the general impression of that group was that the potential negative impacts would be very minimal if it's permitted through bulk controls and it meets the zoning and it does not abut a less or more restrictive zoning neighborhood, R2s and R3s, that the impact of having principally permitted use in an R3 would be negligible as far as to going through that review system. But it's always subject to argument on that.
And it would still go through our infrastructure review process that we're doing now internally for pretty much every new project anyway. So I heard that being brought up, that maybe my office wouldn't work with Engineering Public Works office, and that's not the case. We would still work together on any new project, whether it's Title 41 or not.
Okay. And I think the conversation I had is I was thinking that, this is another loophole, things will slip through the cracks. But as you say, we do the infrastructure where the water comes in, water comes out, and the threshold of whether there are any variances still is a part of it. And again, I'm not taking an argument either way. I was just sitting in council and just so you know, this is being banded back and forth of a change in this, which will affect our procedure.
Sure.
Okay, and that's all I really wanted to bring up on that.
I do have a few items to suggest as well for strategic planning. I brought these up before, but I again like to see them if we're really outlining what that calendar is, I'd like these to be included. One is preparing area plans, and this is something that is going to be a little more long-term, and maybe we pick an area and work with the planner on his scheduling and staffing to see if we can come up with this. Is that maybe we focus along corridors or gateways, so to speak. So, look, you got East State Street, you have Columbus Road, you have Union, you have Richland. We pick a section maybe to start with, and we develop an area plan that not only is the commercial area, but looking at the residential areas and basically the areas abutting that corridor, to actually develop an area plan where, design aesthetics are discussed, the roads, kind of things that aren't necessarily covered by our zoning code right now as is. And this is to basically help us when we review things that come to the commission to say, how does this fit in not only with the comprehensive plan, but with the area plan for that location. Again, it's something that I don't know with the planner's resources right now if that's something he can really prepare on his own, or even with the help of a commission, if it would take an outside consultant to...
I think it's a good idea, and that's right in line with, I think, what RJ is stating as well about the Planning Commission being proactive about some of these issues. And I would suggest, why don't we try it? Pick an area, pick a street, pick a neighborhood or something like that, and we can, at some point, mid or late spring, we could have a few public meetings about it, try to get community input, get business owners,
right,
property owners, and people that live in that area, have a couple meetings about it, and try to establish some of those goals. We have small area planning done in the comprehensive plan where they look at each neighborhood and they might have like 2 or 3 pages on it.
Right.
But it's really not fleshed out very well. And if we want to do something,
Well, that's why I think what I'd like to see, again, for maybe what we could do is we could sort of have a discussion. We put this item on the agenda one week, which is going to be in the communications on area plans. And we'll discuss, here's the areas we feel like are sort of ripe for, maybe it's a corridor, East State Street, or maybe it's something like we're going to look at an area that isn't part of the city but might be ripe for annexation, and we're going to come up with, an area plan for that. And we'll just sort of make everything open, and we'll, at the end of hopefully that discussion, we'll settle in on a couple sort of pilot area plans we would like to have produced. And then we'll have to discuss with the planner how he would go about that, if it's something that we can do in-house or if it's something that we'll have to seek funds for bringing a consultant on board. But that way I feel like the commission will get a say and we can sort of really settle on an area that we can produce this plan for.
Nicholas,
go ahead.
if I may.
I'm sorry, please.
And some things that you may not be aware of, but for example, I think we spent $5,000 on a study for the Richland Avenue South area. That's pretty ripe. This is from Public Works Director Andy Stone.
Okay.
Looking at, of course, we all know the streets are bad, and the
Right.
sidewalks, and all the accesses to business and what have you. But so there is some kind of planning work that's out there that can give us a base. Columbus Road is another one we talk about a lot. So,
What about the area between State and 2nd Street on the west side, as far as basically taking a...
North Lancaster, are you talking about, or
Like going up by the
talking
middle
about
school?
like going up, up
I think the west side.
West State, the Miller's Chicken, the...
From West State to Central, that whole block there.
Yeah.
Franklin, Hanlon.
Right, which incorporates school, the desire on some people's part to see the feasibility of incorporating business.
Yeah.
into that area.
Well, yeah, this is exactly what I think we'd have in mind. Is like we'd say,
Multiple,
we go from
more multiple housing units instead of just, the little shotgun houses that are still there and about ready to fall over, and
Right.
things of that nature.
Right. I mean, but that's what we try to do. We try to find sort of nodes or entry points. We'd say, okay, the park, the West State Street Park to Court Street would be a corridor we're going to find, and then we're going to look at the area, the neighborhood surrounding it, and again, we're going to try to find these areas clearly and concisely. In other words, we're not going to try to group too many disparate, aesthetics and types into one area, because we're never going to come to a consensus, and it'd be frustrating for a design consultant. Maybe not, maybe a nice challenge, but try to find those areas that we can define pretty easily. And so again, I think it's not for discussion today, but it's something that I'd like to see as for one of the items that we tackle in these early phases. The other one is the urban development code, is that we have to get in front of city council on this one and really take, and again, this is maybe where planning commission is an advocate of reinvesting in our zoning code and then having city council go through and review it, not the reverse approach is what was taken the last go around. And it could have just been the planning commission wasn't interested in tackling that at the time. But I think it's something that we do have the expertise, we have the knowledge on staff here that we could do this, but at the same time, it's probably another item that an outside consultant would make sense, at least from a review standpoint.
With the zoning code?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the problem, I think, with doing it in-house, is that there's so many different biases that we all bring to
Right.
the table that almost immediately everybody's going to start butting heads. And if you bring in somebody from outside who can be neutral to the concepts and the issues involved, that you can probably get something better out of it.
Right.
It's shaped really by what the community needs and wants, not by necessarily what any individual has influence to need or want.
Yeah, but I feel like, again, we have to sort of drive it. And again,
certainly,
you as
yeah.
the planner have to be able to sort of keep the big picture in mind when doing this, what the sort of ultimate goal is of going into the code. And again, it's tied back to the area plans that we're coming up with so that they can, that they gel together, aren't always in conflict. Because I think that's the frustrations we'll get to is by law, we have the code that we're looking at, but sometimes they're going to be in conflict with what our, the community's desires and our own desires for that area.
Right.
And
With area plans, if you want to have design guidelines incorporated into them and things, we could create
Right.
an overlay district which would carry those plans. But we're getting ahead of ourselves on
Right.
that. But I think that's really important that we begin. Choose a neighborhood, choose a district or something like that, and we can start that process. Been trying to figure out how we would choose. And
I feel like we could probably come, when we do put it on the agenda, I think there's, I don't know if it's just one of us needs to take the charge and do sort of a nomination process. Here's the ones I see it. We'll discuss and say, yeah, these all seem viable, or no, it should be, what about this? And then we'll come back at another meeting and decide. But, I think if we sort of put it together, it's, the city isn't so big that we can't define what these areas are, and, within this commission.
In terms of priorities, I know I've been looking at Public Works Director's projects for the next 4 or 5 years. 8 years out, I think, is where he's actually going to. But, in particular, of course, Paula mentioned the Richland Avenue area, the Columbus Road, and you're talking about major, rebuilding of roads there and structure. And that's probably where that would be some of the, one thing to do is maybe get the commission here a abbreviated scope of services that we plan to do in terms of infrastructure for the next couple of years. And that may give you some look, and again, most of it's, nuts and bolts, roads, water, sewer. But
Yeah.
at the same time, once you start opening that whole thing up and say, okay, we're going to redo all Columbus Road, for instance, at that point, it's like, okay, so do you put, like Pomeroy Road, do you put sidewalks in?
Right.
How do you put the aesthetics in? Do we even want to talk about rezoning it in terms of, example again, Columbus Road, wellhead protection, business zones, et cetera. So maybe one of the things to do is, for our commission is make an abbreviated version of that Excel spreadsheet.
I'd already written it
Okay.
down, infrastructure,
Right.
long-term plan.
I think that's definitely going to be helpful to come up with these.
And the other thing is that to look at historicals and not to spend so much time looking back is that during the comprehensive plan, there was out there the Mill Street plan that had been put together. So that was an example of somebody trying to build a neighborhood. And I'm aware of the fact some of the problems with that, of course, is who is driving it, but also the number of separate owners that are involved, stakeholders involved in terms of that. So that's one issue you have to look at too. Is like, okay, is it going to be easily done if you have 150 different property owners with all different ideas where it should go?
Right.
That just is the ease of implementation, so to speak.
Right. I mean, I've seen where it's pretty much almost undeveloped land, and they do these area plans, and oftentimes they're not going to go back into changing the zoning code, so it will be an overlay, like the planner had suggested. And sometimes even in that case, they still don't work out, and they just get variances for a bunch of things outside of the area plan. So I think it's just going to have to speak to our strengths as a planning commission on after we do an area plan and there's an overlay and things come to us that we can't be as willing to just keep granting variances for more of the same. We have to be willing to sort of take a stand and say, no, the area plan says this, and this is what we should be working towards. So I think just by having a lot of different owners within an area doesn't mean anything for the success of our overall goal.
Okay.
Last but not least is, and this might be actually a good segue into that, is if we could try to, as a planning commission, work with the university on some maybe collaborative pilot projects. We've had discussion in the past about the university not really being beholden to our zoning codes, which is fine, so be it. But if there's projects within the city, because they do impact what the growth and what occurs within the city and where development occurs, is if we could, try to, as a commission, look at what would be some areas where we could collaborate. And the Mill Street one, obviously, is a very viable one. If we were to do an area plan there, we would want their collaboration. And want to sort of work with them as a developer maybe, or other opportunities would be we develop certain neighborhoods where maybe there's a collaboration where we'd like to see more home ownership or rentals by professionals, that we do sort of a pilot housing program where the university buys up some houses, but we sort of work with them again on how the houses are fixed up or new houses, and again try to help maybe rehabilitate or revitalize some neighborhoods.
Okay,
But again, big picture things, nothing.
Well, I realize that, of course, they put out a request for information for essentially most of New South Green and South Green to renovate that eventually. So that's in progress right now, if I understand correctly. They're looking at how to upgrade their housing stock there.
Right.
Which means, and they're of course going to private entities because they don't have the money to run it, probably build it all.
Right.
At that point, does that fall into an entire subdivision right there, or does it fall into a giant PUD at that point? Because in a sense, it's not really making new roads, they're private roads, what's in there now. I know that's on their plate probably sooner than later. Whether we have a part in that conversation is another matter. I guess we can approach them and talk to them about it.
Well, again, I think maybe this is in line with what RJ is saying, is sort of asserting what our role is as the planning commission, and can we find opportunities where we can collaborate with more developers, with the university on projects, so that things aren't as contentious, or at least they can be contentious leading up to the planning commission hearing, but once there, everything's sort of resolved. That's an ultimate dream.
Yeah.
So again, that would be I don't know how you would title that sort of concept, but trying to find ways to collaborate with the university.
I'd like to find a way really to collaborate with the county. Again, if we are talking about an eventual or a desired push to the south in terms of annexation, reaching out towards the airport, developing opportunities for more commerce, for more residents, as you go towards Albany. A lot of that is going to bring in the county commission, and I would like to see a collaboration of sorts with them in terms of what their vision is, what plans they've talked about, and where the city can really fit in and help, I think, generate the idea that many people in the county have voiced is that they would like to see more of a push towards the south rather than the east, towards Parkersburg. And, can the Planning Commission, along with the Athens County Commission, can we band together and really collaborate in the sense of, how do we drive the direction that we would like future development to go, and how that would fit into both of our plans.
Well, again, I'm on the Regional Planning Commission. Paul Logue is, Harry is, Chris Fall is. So we have various parts of the administration involved right now. I'm aware of the fact that there is a ad hoc committee being put together for looking at a sewer system, sanitary sewer system, going in that general direction, or rather reviewing it. I think there was a report that was done about 10 years ago to look at if you need, really that's the restriction, the limiting factor for development in that corridor is a good sanitary sewer system out there. I know that I think Bob Eichenberg has been volunteered to head that up. He's probably looking for members to be involved in it on every level. I'm not sure where it's going to go at this point, but it's in its formative stage, and that would be the concept out there, because once you can, if you can expand the services out towards Albany in a proper manner, the water's already there, LEAX is there. The sanitary sewer is probably the limiting factor there, and after that, I imagine the electric service is not a problem, nor maybe broadband would be. I imagine at that point that is something that is being discussed to working together, because we probably would have to work with them at some point. Not so much annexation, but some kind of, I think the conversation has been kicked around. You have various things. Annex it out in that direction, which I don't know if we have the wherewithal to do. Create a water treatment plant, a standalone water treatment plant, or coordinate with us and put out use hours for the treatment and then for this infrastructure. So these things have been kicked around for a while. Again, I don't know where, I guess I'm almost on the committee. I'm listening to it, but there hasn't been any real meetings so far. Formal meetings of just conversations that are going with
Could we get occasional updates from, what's happening with that commission?
If you want, I'll volunteer your name. You can give us the updates. How's that sound? So watch out.
Well, I mean, it might be nice to, again, set that item on our agenda one week, have, Bob Eichenberg come from the Regional Planning Commission, again, sort of have a shared visioning session where, again, we can not so much know what they're working on versus what we're working on, but or is there some area that we could work on together?
Okay.
Again, because you or Harry can provide that sort of back and forth, but if we could try to find a common ground on some area. I don't know if we could bring anyone from the university in.
Well, you never know. I mean, they have real estate out there in that direction.
Right.
And, yeah. One of the things to think about doing if we want to look at our role is to actually, and I know early on we talked about the times and places to have the Planning Commission. Again, part of the thing is to be more available. If you realize this is it's a little bit afternoon, so somebody's lunchtime. It's your lunchtime probably. On the other hand, some other people can't make it here. So if we want to shift location and times, that would be another thing to think about to make it more accessible. And I'm not sure what 7 o'clock at the community center or something like that, but we wouldn't be live, we'd be taped at that point. But the idea is to make ourselves available in other places, whether it's here or somewhere on the east side or something, or somewhere on the south side.
Well, it'd be interesting. I mean, again, depending on what the item is of the agenda at that time, to try to have those meetings where, it is more pertinent. If we have the B2D discussion,
Well, here we are in the BTD.
Exactly. Seems
Well, if we
okay
were
to
talking
me.
about West Side discussions, have it at the Arts West.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have a good agenda ready.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think those are very good items, and this is something I think Shar will have in the minutes, and we should all sort of review those and sort of maybe at the next meeting place a hierarchy on them after we've had a little more time to gestate on it.
Okay.
And then sort of really go forward and, I'll try to set some dates with Shar after we have a hierarchy, barring cases or certain things, we'll juggle those around, but otherwise try to sort of set an agenda for ourselves that we'll try to keep to. Is there any further discussion on strategic planning? All right, thank you, everyone. Next, we have reports from the city planner and director code.
Okay,
Who would like to begin?
I'll begin if
Okay.
that's all right, John.
Yeah.
I did a few updates I wanted to give everybody first on some things going on around town. The Richland Avenue 682 roundabout, the pre-construction meeting and contract signing for the project is taking place tomorrow. The winning bidder was Shelley and Sands with a bid amount just under $4 million. The preliminary engineer's estimate that the city had done was anticipating that this would cost about $5.4 million. So we're actually about $1.4 million under on this estimate, which is huge, and that's a great thing for the city of Athens. That extra money we should be able to use that towards other capital improvements around the city. So that's we're feeling like we're getting a really good bang for our buck right now with them. Shelley and Sands does expect to begin the major work on it in mid-March or early April, depending on the weather. The timelines, according to Andy Stone, they are on track already with what we're expecting when to get it done. AEP has begun some of the utility work at the Dairy Barn in Richland Avenue area. They're out there right now actually working on that. So the roundabout is underway. If there's any questions about it, we do have a 10-minute video that Andy Stone, Tom Pyle, and our Athens TV guys put together, which is really informative. Breaks down every stage of it and when the roads will be closed and what the expectations are and how it impacts you. So that's available on the city's website. It's also on Channel 15 all the time. The Grand Vista project.
I was aware there was a printout, actually. The university's got a timetable and a schedule of the phases that they've been passing around, too. So they're actually coordinating with us pretty well there.
Yeah.
I was at a store and somebody pulled out a piece of paper and said they got it at Bromley Hall and what did it mean, and it was really the timetable when everything started. Of course, I think the start time they said was March 1st, and I said, well, it's a little bit behind March 1st, but expect delays, as you say, mid-March easily.
Yeah.
And I didn't know the authorship of it, but the timetable was correct, and it looked, in subsequent questions from the director, it was coming from the university. So there is a crosstalk going on there.
It's actually information that we've disseminated to the university.
And they're printing out, which is good.
With the Grand Vista project, the engineering documents for that have been reviewed by our Public Works Department. Burgess and Nyepel will be doing additional review for stormwater calculations and slope stability analysis to make sure that the project does conform with Athens City Code Title 27, which is our land development ordinance. All of that's been going underway right now. We just sent back our comments to them yesterday from the Engineering and Public Works Department, and that's proceeding on schedule, I believe. The town hall meeting, we already discussed that, so I'm not going to get into any detail on that, but that's April 8th at 6:30 p.m. at the community center. It'd be great to see the planning commission represented there. Two potential annexations that may be coming along. We met with Mike Knoll, who is representing the property ownership for the old Columbia Gas site out on East State Street. It is the only parcel along East State Street from I'm looking at it on the zoning map right there. It is surrounded by the river and then by
M1, M zone.
by M zones on either side, and it has frontage on East State Street. So that is clearly, just by looking at the map, that is a piece of land that would wisely become part of the city of Athens, just for so that we have some influence and control over the zoning of it, development, etc. So that may be coming down the road for us. They have to petition through the Athens County Commissioners first to request annexation, and once it goes through the county process, the county would then make a recommendation to the city of Athens, to City Council, to accept an annexation, and then there'd be a discussion between City Council and the property owners over services that we would offer. So that may be coming. There's also another annexation that may be coming for a parcel on Old Peachridge that is on the city side of the highway. It is, but for whatever reason, it is county land right now. I can show that on the map after the meeting if we need to get any more information on that, but that would likely be annexed in as an R1 single-family residential piece of land. It has city utilities, etc., in very close proximity to the site. And if you look at it on a map, it's another piece that makes sense to be part of the city as opposed to part of the county. So
Is that actually a single ownership parcel, or is that?
it would be a single ownership. Yeah.
Or it's just a regular lot size or something?
It's a large lot. It's on the hillside that abuts the highway. So it's got that large cut down the road there.
Is it the steel and glass?
I'm sorry?
Is it the steel and glass house, or?
I don't believe there's any
There's
structures
nothing
on
there,
it.
okay.
It's about 9.5 acres on Old Peachridge. So. And the only other issue I had was I included that packet up there for each of you. What you're seeing here is City Council has talked about this a few times. I don't know if it can be seen on the map. And I believe back in 2004, there was a request that the Planning Commission consider a rezoning of all of the areas of our floodway as open space. City Council has not officially requested or sent a resolution to the Planning Commission to consider this option, but they may be doing so, and they asked me to put together a basic packet for you guys about it. The floodway is the light gray area that is on either side of the river on that map. There's all kinds of different zones that exist on that land right now. Based upon our floodplain ordinance, which I included the pertinent parts here, it's very limited what anybody can do on the floodway as is, because it is a very dangerous area if flooding should occur. I included the definition of floodway in there as well. It is a channel of the river or water course that have been reserved in order to pass the base flood discharge. Floodway is typically determined through a hydraulic and hydrologic engineering analysis. In no case shall the designated height be more than 1 foot within the community. It is an extremely hazardous area and is usually characterized by any of the following: moderate to high velocity floodwaters, high potential for debris and projectile impacts, and moderate to high erosion forces. And basically, in the city of Athens, it's extremely difficult to do any type of development in our floodways because FEMA doesn't allow it unless you go through an expensive process with FEMA to develop in a floodway, and that where you physically have the map changed, the legal mapping, so that the parcel of land is no longer in the floodway. That has been done a few times in the city of Athens. There's a few buildings, I think 3 or 4 in the city of Athens, that have been grandfathered in that exist in the floodway, but we don't generally, John and I don't have the authority to issue a permit for floodway development, nor would we without the proper communications and approvals through FEMA. So this is something that City Council may want to consider, so I just included that in there for discussion. A resolution from council may be coming in the next few months, but I wanted to at least have you guys thinking about it. So, and most of it is open space right now. A lot of the land is owned by the city. You can see like the West State Street Park. A lot of that land is floodway. It's technically zoned manufacturing, but it is a city-owned park. It's in the floodway, it's in the floodplain, and it's in the wellhead protection area, so the likelihood of any manufacturing use taking place in that area is slim to none, which is why it maybe makes sense to rezone those areas as open space, since that's what we use it for.
Are the soccer fields that are on Stimson?
Correct.
Are they just outside of that, or if I'm looking at this correctly, or?
No, they're in the floodway. You're correct. Wait, I'm sorry, on East State you mean? Or?
No, on Stimson, catty corner to Mill Street Village?
They are not.
Okay.
No.
There's just like a little bit of a, okay.
On East State Street.
City land.
But soccer fields, like those type, by Stimson,
Right.
that would be, that's passive land at that point, so there wouldn't be any problems with having activity in the floodway. We have all kinds of activities that go on in our floodway. It's just that you don't want to have you don't want to have development in your floodway per se.
If I remember, the FEMA wants to look at impediments to flow, because floodway
Yeah.
is where things get carried down
Right.
and do more damage downstream. Essentially, on East State Street, pretty much everything on the south of the old railroad bike path is essentially floodway for the most part.
I'm just talking in regards to, I guess, some people's interest in a fire station being located down at the soccer fields at that point.
Well,
So
that area would not be, that would not be in the floodway, and we wouldn't be able to have
Okay.
a fire station in our floodway anyway.
And
Nor would we want to, for that matter, because it's a critical safety feature, and we would not, flooding is our most high-risk event that's going to happen, and we would need to have our fire department ready to go to respond to any issues, so. But those would be issues, those would be things we'd want to evaluate. If we're going to rezone, what are the impacts, what potential issues could we come up with? And that's why City Council wanted me to get this to you guys now, to be thinking about that. And I can provide more detailed mapping down the road.
If you could provide sort of an overlay where you put the floodway on the zoning map,
Yeah,
would be helpful.
it's actually on here, but I just,
Yeah, no,
rather than
I mean, it could just be.
kill all of the ink that we have down on the first floor, I
Yeah,
tried
if
to
you
do
could
a
just
black
send
and
maybe
white
the
for you.
PDF to us so that we could maybe
Yeah, I
review
can
on
do
our own
that.
time.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Do you visualize this as an overlay or a straight changing? Because basically what you're seeing here is that you're going to cross over manufacturing zones, R3s, R1s, business districts, and to call it an overlay, do you understand what I mean? In other words,
Yeah, I do, yeah.
To the zoning change, we have to contact each owner and say, we're going to downzone you from
Right.
manufacturing. And that's going to
That's what
affect
I'm not sure about that either, how we would want to handle it. The initial request was to rezone as opposed to an overlay, and that was, I think I included in your packet, there's an email discussion from Elaine Getz when she was chairing our floodplain ordinance committee. They recommended this in that committee, but because we're dealing with a lot of parcels of land, it could get very complicated very quick. And so we may want to consider it as an overlay. I guess I would argue that our floodplain ordinance exists today as an overlay because it regulates anything within the special flood hazard area. So even though we may not consider it an overlay, it's Title 25 does have specific regulatory influence over how we develop in those areas.
Do we need to bring anybody in from the Athens, Hocking River Conservancy? They're in charge of the restructured, the Army Corps of Engineers section of it, at least.
If we want to consider this,
probably-
again, City Council has not sent a resolution down asking the Planning Commission to review this yet. I want to get the information out.
Okay.
Yeah, but I think if we're serious about this, or if City Council would like to see this change happen, the Planning Commission, we should try to get as much professional expertise and advice on this as possible about the pros of doing this as well as any potential cons. And I'm sure there's cons out there that could occur from this. The initial thrust from the folks who were working on the committee for the floodplain ordinance changes was to do this so that we could get some points for that CRS program. Now, as a general rule, I don't think it's good for us to be making policy and changing ordinances specifically so we can get points for the CRS. I think we should be making changes and decisions based upon what is best for the community and best for the city of Athens, not necessarily for that specific purpose. And the CRS even tells you in the application process, do not change city codes just so you can get points for the CRS. So I don't think that's the route we want to take. Otherwise, I'd be lobbying for it right now. But this may be something we want to consider.
And as it stands, we can't build it anyway.
Very limited.
We're just kind of codify what we can't do.
Another issue that might come up that I saw was that you may have split zoning on a single parcel of land because you have a large parcel of land like that Columbia Gas, for example. There may be some part, the southernmost portions may be in the floodway, so you'd have the southernmost portion zoned open space, but then the northernmost may be zoned manufacturing if we annex that in. So you may see issues like that, and that can complicate it from a permitting process on our end, but as well as just from a property rights perspective for individual property owner. So, but that's something we can bring up down the road.
Interesting. I'm looking at this map that you generated there. I'm looking at that Columbia Gas site, and it looks like there's a little box there that represents the building that is gone. Is that my imagination?
Probably so.
That's probably correct. Yeah.
Okay.
I was using an old building footprint layer that we had done. I think Ron Lucas did that when he was GIS
It was before they tore it
for
down.
the city, so that was probably 8 or 10 years ago Ron created that layer.
Okay.
Any other items?
No, sir.
Questions?
No.
John?
Mine's quite simple. Give you an update on the stage ordinance. At this time, we are totally withdrawing the stage part of it after the ad hoc committee met last Friday, and the proposal right now is just to amend or put in something for the sound ordinance and the rooftop ordinance. But the stage issue at this time, we're pulling out altogether until we find out exactly where the other parts are going. So what we discussed last week at this time is not an issue, or 2 weeks ago. So we don't have to discuss it any further for now. And that's all I have.
Any questions for John? All right, thank you both. Opportunity for citizens to speak about items not covered on the agenda. All right, moving forward, announcements and other business. Our next meeting is scheduled for March 17th. Same time and place, even though we discussed the possibility of moving the time and location, not for next meeting. Any other announcements?
No.
All right. Disposition of last week's minutes. Everyone have a time to review either before today's meeting or at today's meeting?
I looked at it. I didn't see anything that jumped out at me as incorrect, so I move that we accept the minutes.
I'll second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now we move to adjourn today's meeting.
Okay, second. Okay, we're adjourned.